strong jobs market, right? Oh, it's so strong, the tight labor market. We hear so much about it. Trav, you got the wrong screen up there, brother. We've heard about this for years, all right? You can free clips of people just saying the strong jobs market, the strong labor market, resilient. It's fake, all right? It's not true. Case in point, have your wages gone up to keep pace with inflation, you, the viewer? Almost certainly not. And if you're lucky enough to say yes to that question, then God bless you. But for everybody else, the cost of living has gone up more than the cost of labor. So that one data point right there tells you that this image of the strong labor market is bunk, because labor doesn't get cheaper relative to goods and services if labor is in short supply, right? If there's a supply-demand imbalance in labor, labor would be getting more expensive than other stuff, but it's not. It's getting less. So we have been lied to about this strong labor market. And we got a lot of data this week that supports that, all except the one data point that everybody was talking about yesterday, the 272,000 jobs that we added. That one data point that points to a strong labor market, which we're going to show later, is BS. Everything else is screaming that the job market is not as strong as they're telling us. Let's start earlier this week. We got this one at Bloomberg. All right, we've got U.S. payroll gains not as robust as reported, the BLS data suggests. They're saying last year they overestimated by 60,000 jobs a month in these non-farm payrolls report. And the job market is weaker than the Fed thinks. The U.S. job market may be a lot less vibrant than Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell and his colleagues seem to think. And I would add that there are 400 PhDs working at the Federal Reserve. Do we really believe that all 400 of those PhDs are wrong, or are they just not telling us the truth? Maybe some guy on YouTube knows more than 400 economic PhDs. Maybe that's possible. Or maybe they're just intentionally ignoring the data that doesn't support what they want to tell us. Data published Wednesday by the Bureau of Labor Statistics suggests payrolls might have grown by about 60,000 less per month on average last year than the roughly 250,000 run rate derived from the agency's monthly employment report. And Bloomberg is understating this here because the actual data said that in 2023, they overstated the jobs by 730,000. The headline was we added 2.7 million jobs in 2023. And now this data is saying, whoops, we overstated that by 730,000. So almost a quarter or more than a quarter of the job gains of last year never happened. And so they're saying here there's a pretty good chance that the establishment survey has been really overstating the condition of the labor market. That's according to Barry Knapp, the founder of Ironsides Macroeconomics, who said the monthly payroll numbers, the job market is weaker than the Fed thinks. Now, we got more data this week that says the job market is weaker than the Fed thinks. We get the job openings number. We had that on Wednesday, I believe. The Job Openings and Labor Turnover Survey, also known as JOLTS. It's a very little known data point. Some people follow it. Most people are unaware of it. But the number of job openings in the United States declined by 296,000 from the previous month, down to 8,059,000 in April. That is the lowest number since February of 2021. So we had 300,000 job openings went away last month. Now, this is a chart showing U.S. job openings going back to 2019. Now, obviously, you're probably noticing right away that big bump that we got in 2021, right? This huge lurch here. And I don't think those were real job openings. And a lot of people are starting to agree with me. I've been talking about this for about 2 years on my channel. I did an interview with a guy from Twitter. It's called The Happy Hawaiian, who made a fantastic presentation about how this whole spike in job openings was fake. This was the advent of work from home when this big spike happened. And when work from home started becoming a major thing, one job started to be posted in every city around the country. Because if somebody can do this job from home, then you can post it in New York, Chicago, Los Angeles, Detroit, everywhere. So you've got one job posted everywhere. It created millions of job openings out of thin air, but there wasn't really a job behind every one of those openings. And for years, we've been pointing to all of these job openings saying, look how strong the labor market is. We peaked over 12 million in March of 2022, which coincidentally is right when the Fed started raising interest rates and quantitative tightening. And you can see since that peak in March of 2022, this thing has been falling fast. Now, the problem is it's still higher than pre-pandemic. So a lot of people look at this chart and say, well, there's still more job openings than there was before the pandemic, and therefore the labor market is still tight. But remember, this whole big spike was fake. And at the rate this thing is dropping, if you account for that spike, there's actually fewer available jobs now than there was pre-pandemic. So the labor market is already very loose, very weak. And then, of course, we got the jobs report, and everybody was bloviating about this yesterday. U.S. adds a much better than expected 272,000 jobs in May, but unemployment edges up to 4%. Now, there were some interesting things in there. And keep in mind, guys, a 0.1% increase in unemployment is about 160,000 people. All right, so you can kind of quantify this a little bit. So the economy created 272,000 jobs. So that's about almost 0.2% more people working. The participation rate fell from 62.7 to 62.5. So 300,000 people dropped out of the job market, and therefore they're no longer counted as unemployed. And yet the unemployment rate rose from 3.9 to 4.0. So those statistics right there, those three things, that the labor force participation rate went down, unemployment went up, but we supposedly added 272,000 jobs. One of these things is not like the other. Those 272,000 jobs, that number is BS. All right. Now, there's two different surveys within the unemployment report, within the jobs report. And the reason why I think that 272,000 jobs is fake is because of the two different surveys. All right. They're called the establishment survey and the household survey. Now, what we're looking at here is the unemployment rate. You can see it's risen steadily over the last year or so. Now, with the establishment survey, that gives us the headline number, how many jobs were added. They call up establishments, they call businesses, and they say, how many people are working there? Did you hire somebody? And the businesses are saying, yeah, we hired 272,000 people. Now, then there's the other half of the jobs report is the household survey, and they call up people and they say, are you working? And if you're working, are you working full-time or are you working part-time? And we have got a huge disconnect between the establishment survey and the household survey. Now, to do that, we're going to go to figure out what's going on, what's behind that big deviation. You actually have to go into the weeds. We're going to get data heavy here. This is the actual non-farm payrolls report, or the employment situation summary that gets released by the Bureau of Labor Statistics. And of course, they always start with the headline number, the 272,000 jobs that were added in May. That is from the establishment survey. But I want to go into the household survey. That's where the good stuff is. So I scroll down past all of the talking points. My favorite thing to do when these jobs numbers come out is go to table A9 in these reports. I know we're getting a little technical here. All right. But in table A9, they actually break up the employment statistics. We're going to focus on the seasonally adjusted numbers from April to May. I know seasonal adjustment, some people have an issue with that. It's the best data we have. We have to go with the numbers they give us, unfortunately. We can't invent our own data points. But if you scroll down past all of these age and gender demographics, you get into full or part-time workers. And this, I think, tells the best story of the economy, of what's actually going out. Right here, you've got the number of people who are working full-time jobs in April in the United States. And it was 133,889,000. This chart is giving us numbers in thousands. So that's 133.8 million. Now, in the May report, we had 133,264,000. That means the U.S. economy lost 625,000 full-time jobs in the last month. That's full-time jobs that come with benefits and paid time off, vacation, you're home with the kids at night, right? Full-time jobs, 625,000 lost from April to May. Keep in mind, they're telling us 272,000 jobs added. So right away, something doesn't smell right here. Now we're going to go to the part-time workers. And this is where we get a little bit different. In April, we had 27.718 million part-time workers. And now we have just over 28 million part-time workers. So we added 286,000 part-time jobs. And guys, this has been the trend for like the last year and a half. We have been losing millions of full-time jobs, well-paying, benefits-added jobs. And we have been gaining these BS low-paying part-time jobs by the millions. And all the while they've been saying the economy is so good, the economy is so strong. It's obviously not. When people lose full-time jobs and have to go be a barista at Starbucks or a greeter at Walmart to make ends meet, that is not a good, strong economy. That is not a strong labor market. That's desperate people doing whatever they have to do to make it work. And you can see that even more in this category in Table A9, the multiple job holders. In the month of April, we had 8,383 multiple job holders. And in the month of May, 8,399,000. So we've added 16,000 more people had to go get a second job in May. That's not economic prosperity, that's desperation. Now, 16,000 versus about 8.4 million, that's kind of a rounding error, but this number has risen by more than 1 million since last year. More than 1 million Americans have had to get a second job because the cost of living has risen faster than wages. Again, that doesn't happen in a strong labor market. That happens in a weak labor market. And the last thing I want to point out is self-employed unincorporated. In other words, that's your gig workers, your Uber and Lyft drivers, right? Self-employed unincorporated went from 9.952 million to 10,065,000. So we added another 113,000 gig workers. So let's take all this in aggregate, all right? While they're telling us the hot jobs economy and we added all these jobs, we lose 625,000 full-time jobs in the household survey. We gained 286,000 part-time. 16,000 more people had to get a second job, and 113,000 people are driving Ubers. Does this seem like a strong labor market to you? This is nowhere near a strong labor market. This data is screaming weak labor market, higher unemployment just around the corner. Now, I know a lot of people are probably talking about this, and this is a sensitive subject, but I just want to remind people what we talked about last week, how the screamers dominate the conversation on immigration. Let's try to tone that down a little bit. But in Table A2, we get a little bit more clarity on what's going on in the economy. Now, let me just go to the right place here. Was it A? Oh, I'm sorry. It was Table A7. Wrong table. Table A7. All right. Now, what we're doing here is we are talking about unemployment levels among people who are born in the United States, native born, and people who are not born in the United States, non-native born. Now, I just want to also add the caveat that non-native born, that also includes foreign-born U.S. citizens, all right? And that also includes legal immigration, and it includes undocumented migrants, illegal immigrants, all right? So this is not an apples-to-apples comparison when a lot of people are saying it's all the illegal immigrants are taking the jobs. When we say foreign-born, that does include a lot of U.S. citizens and a lot of legal immigrants, so keep that in mind. But we're talking about year-over-year changes here now. Now, we got some really interesting year-over-year changes. Let's start with the native-born, or we'll start with the foreign-born numbers here. All right, people not born in the United States, again, not necessarily illegal immigrants. All right, the population of foreign-born people in the United States in May of last year was 46.769 million. This year, it's 48.311 million. So we have added over 1.5 million foreign-born people in the United States. Immigrants, legal and illegal, and U.S. citizens who were born in other countries. 1.542 million higher. Now, the labor force among them has gone from 31.249 million a year ago to 31.989 million. So that's a gain of 740,000 foreign-born workers in the United States. So that the labor force participation rate, by the way, has gone down a little bit from 66.8 to 66.2. So some of those foreign-born people have dropped out of the workforce. But now look at the employed. The number of employed foreign-born people in the United States has gone from 30,259,000 to 30,896,000. 637,000 more people working versus last year that were not born in the United States. And lastly, the unemployment rate among foreign-born people has gone from 3.2% to 3.4%. So the unemployment rate is rising among this demographic. But you're seeing, guys, population growth of 1.5 million, labor force growth of 740,000, and then the actual employed number of people growing by 637,000. Foreign-born people are doing very well in this labor market. They are gaining jobs. Now let's talk about the native-born, people born in the United States, U.S. native-born citizens. The population for native-born people has gone from 219.849 million to 219.937 million. So it's grown by 88,000. So the population of native born is growing just barely by 88,000, but contrast that with a gain of 1.5 million for foreign born. That's what we were talking about in the previous China segment, how if you take away immigration, the United States has the same fertility problem that they have, maybe not as bad in China, but it's still there. And then the civilian labor force has gone from 135,453 to 135,587. So we've actually had a gain of 134,000 in the workforce. But again, contrast that with a gain of 740,000 in the foreign-born workforce. You can see how the demographics are really favoring the foreign-born workers here. Participation rate among the native-born has been unchanged at 61.6%. Now look at the employed number, and this is where I think people are probably going to get a little bit angry here, but the numbers are the numbers. The number of employed native-born people in the United States went from 130,744,000 to 130,445,000. So that is a loss of 299,000. Almost 300,000 fewer native-born Americans are working right now versus a year ago, while almost double that, or more than double that number, 637,000 more foreign-born people are working in this country. That is a swing of almost 1 million people. And you see now how the immigration story is, yes, it is affecting the labor market. And of course, the unemployment rate has risen more for native-born populations than foreign-born populations, from 3.5 to 3.8%. So we've got this big deviation between the household numbers and the establishment numbers. All right. When you call up businesses, we added 272,000 people. When you call up people, you get 600,000 of us lost full-time jobs, and maybe a third of us got part-time jobs. So there's obviously a big disconnect between the people and the businesses. And I wonder, the people that they're calling, does that include the 1.5 million foreign-born people who have come into this country who are now participating in the workforce? I don't think it does. So immigration is absolutely playing a role in the labor force, in these jobs numbers, creating this big disconnect between the two surveys in the unemployment report. And that's absolutely playing a big role in why wages are not rising as fast as the cost of living, because while the price of things is going up, typically people would demand a higher wage, but we are importing labor supply. And when you import more supply, you suppress the price. And so wages are being held down both by interest rate hikes and quantitative tightening at the Fed, but also by the mass importation of cheap labor that is preventing wages from rising. You can see it in Table A7 and Table A9 in that report from the Bureau of Labor Statistics. And that is why we do not have a strong and resilient labor market.
Melody?
Great job. Yeah, excellent, Jack. So Travis, if you could just bring up this. Yeah, so I just wanted to touch on something you're talking about, Jack, which is the labor participation rate. And, this is one of the reasons why I think we've been in a silent depression. And since 2007, really, a lot of things going on globally. But if you look, really, we peaked in about 2001 when it came to a participation rate. And you can see it has steadily started to come down. And a lot of this, I believe, has to do with folks feeling like they cannot find work that could sustain their existence, and they've sort of given up, and they've done a lot of the gig work, things like that. But still, there's folks out there that talk about the 2 million missing men from the workforce. Some people have said maybe they're staying home to take care of, children, which that's awesome. But I can tell you, of the people that I know and talk to around here that aren't in the labor force, that is not it. They don't see a viable path. A lot of people are living at home longer. And a lot of people in their basement playing video games. I mean, it's just, and by the way, that in some countries, like the Philippines, people they do pay to play video games, and that's actually their job. But I just want everyone to kind of see that in reality, the economic situation in the United States has not been great for some time, but there has been a concerted effort in sort of hiding what's going on by looking. I mean, you can remember, Jack, probably in 2018, they're talking about the strong labor market then, and really that was, again, services jobs. So what kind of, I guess my question would be, what jobs do you think that these foreign-born workers are taking? And what do you see in terms of trends there?
I don't have the data on hand to support it, but my gut tells me they're taking more low-skilled labor tasks, right? Obviously, a lot of agriculture, and that does kind of feed into a lot of the common criticisms, or maybe some of the things we've even seen in the comments here, that we need this importation of cheap labor in order to keep prices down. Well, how's that working? Are prices being kept down? No, they're not. Prices are still going up. But what's not going up is your wages. So when they say we need these people to come in to keep wage inflation from happening, well, that's like saying we need to keep hurting poor Americans to the benefit of rich Americans, because who benefits from this cheap labor? It sure as heck isn't the American middle class. It sure as heck isn't the American lower classes. No, it's the ownership class that owns the businesses that are selling at higher prices while their labor costs are being held down by the importation of cheap labor. So, that whole we need this to keep wages from going down to stop inflation, that is BS. That is making the inflation felt by the average American worse because his wages are being suppressed. And the other thing is that, we need to bring these people in because these are jobs that Americans won't take. Well, look, I've worked some really rough jobs. I've been a commercial fisherman. All right. I've done manual labor before. The price was right. And so I was willing to put my butt on the line on a boat and do that menial work because I made good money doing it. And if we didn't have this flood of, in just the last year, guys, 1.5 million people, maybe the price of the labor to do that job would rise to a point where an American was willing to take that deal, because wages are a transaction. It's a mutually agreed upon deal. You agree to sell your time for money. And right now, because we're importing all this cheap labor, the wages in these jobs are being held so low that Americans won't take it. But these people coming into the country will. Well, maybe if we didn't have that big importation of cheap labor, the wages would be forced to rise by supply and demand until Americans were willing to take those jobs. And then maybe we wouldn't have such a problem of cheap wages in this country.
And one of the reasons that the 80s are so different to today is that you had women joining the workforce, which really, because a lot of people have been arguing that's why, they have said that home prices didn't go down in the 80s, when rates were rising, whatever. But in reality, you had women joining the workforce. And I think what you're seeing here is the opposite, and not necessarily women, but both women and men understand that nurse, like if you pay for childcare, that's going to wipe out all of your wages. Like you're not going to make anything. You're going to be net negative once you realize, okay, I've got to pay for childcare. I have to pay for gas. I have to buy my work clothes. And so in reality, we've created this upside down situation where people are leaving the workforce because it's more expensive to work.
Absolutely. Right. I mean, the price of the price of childcare went up so much in the last few years. But again, because we've imported all this additional labor and because the job market is not that strong, people are leaving the labor market because the childcare exceeds the cost of the wage you would earn by paying that childcare. So people are leaving the workforce. And that's going to create a shortage of labor, which will force those wages to go back up in order to convince those people to re-enter the workforce. Unless you import millions of new labor supply, then that doesn't happen. And that's where we get this situation.
So I kind of have a little bit of a different focus on the data that you presented, because I'm noticing a trend, Jack, and it's very disheartening. It's actually very depressing, and that's data revisions. The data revisions appear to be a trend now. It appears to be a trend where the establishment is hiding the bad stuff. And I say that because the data revisions are almost 100% of the time to the downside. It's worse. And so I want to reiterate for the viewers what you just said that hit me like a ton of bricks. First of all, you said for 2023, there were 730,000 jobs that were revised, that went away. Is that correct, Jack?
Yes, but that wasn't the monthly revisions to the prior jobs numbers that
It was the
we
whole
were
year.
used to. That is also going on. But this is the BLS went back and looked at the entirety of 2023 and
Yes.
said, whoops,
Right.
we overstated by almost 750,000.
My point is, though, that was, like, as you said, that was a 25% reduction in jobs. Essentially, what I'm trying to point out, we can't trust the establishment. And I also want to mention that you also said that, first of all, the headline is the establishment survey. The headline is not the household survey. The establishment survey said somehow, this will be revised, there's a trend, that there was an increase of jobs of 272,000. The market, sent the 10-year shooting upward. They're like, oh my gosh, the labor market's hot. But when we compare the establishment survey to the household survey, where now citizens are completing the survey, it doesn't say that we had an increase in jobs. It says, when we do the math, that there was actually a decrease of 300,000 jobs. The discrepancy is over 500,000 in 1 month. In 1 month, the discrepancy is 500,000. And so, to me, Jack, that's that's suspicious, man. That's suspicious. We have an election year. We're seeing multiple data points revised. I mean,
Travis,
I'm not
that
trying to,
is exactly
but,
why we started this network. All right,
Well,
the
I'm not-
establishment survey and the household survey. When you talk
I'm
to
not trying to wear,
businesses-
Jack, I'm not trying to wear a tinfoil hat. All right. I don't want people to think I'm just some doomer. I'll wear a doomer shirt, but my God, Jack, how could we not? I'm starting to think, you want to know who wears the tinfoil hat? It's the bulls. It's the bulls that are not the realists. We're realists. When someone keeps revising data and keeps tricking the way I'm thinking, I don't trust them anymore. I don't want any part of it. And so my question to you, Jack, why are they able to get away with this? Why are they going to, why can they,
Who benefits? Who benefits, Travis? The ownership class benefits from this, right? Again, the telling everybody everything is great in the labor market, even though wages are being suppressed, that benefits the people who own the businesses, the people who own most of the stocks and the assets. All right. And you see that when you turn on CNBC, everything is great. You see that in the establishment survey when they talk to businesses, we're hiring all these people. And then, of course, you talk to people, actual, Americans living on the ground in the real world, and you get a totally different scenario painted, because that is the experience felt by the average person is nowhere near what they're describing in the financial press. It's nowhere near what the establishment survey is saying in the non-farm payrolls report. It's closer to what we're saying here on DNN and to what we see in the household survey, where hundreds of thousands of people are getting laid off from full-time jobs and having to go work at freaking Starbucks and Walmart to make ends meet.
I mean, but the headlines say everything is great. So we got to, technically we only got 60 seconds. We'll run a little long because some of these are really great questions, Jack and Melody. So here's one from Brojo, Gen X, the BS. Creative name. Anyways, he's saying part-time versus full-time seems relative. And I want you to educate him, okay? I want to, but I'm too fired up because I'm really, how the hell are they doing this? Excuse me, my language. You can work part-time, but make equal or even more money, we're just talking money, than some full-timers. Jack, is that true?
Brojo's right there. All right, you can, especially when we're talking about skilled trades. And look, we're all talking about student loan forgiveness right now. So there is a transition happening in the labor market where college degrees are becoming less valuable, white collar jobs are going away, and the skilled tradesmen are overtaking them. So if you're in a trade working by the hour, especially when you factor in overtime, Brojo's right. You might be making a lot more money than that guy with a liberal arts degree who gave up on his category and now he's going to teach or something. But on top of that, I would say that's not what we're seeing in these jobs numbers. The biggest category for the last year and a half has been leisure and hospitality. We've added part-time jobs in leisure and hospitality. That's restaurants and hotels. Those are not skilled tradesmen. So yes, Brojo's right. You can. if you pursue a career in the trades, you can make more than your full-time counterparts in part-time work, but that's not what most people are feeling right now.
There's a but there. And I'm hoping Melody is going to not. Now, Melody, what do you think about that?
Sorry, I was on mute. No, I would agree. And so, I mean, the services sector is not where, you're going to make a lot of money. You're going to have to work 3 of those jobs. And so I would agree. Like Jack is saying, I do think the labor market is changing. And I do think those who initially had liberal arts degrees like I did, that's why I raised my hand, are going to suffer. And we're moving more toward, I think, people who do get educated in a trade are going to be better off than white collar jobs, because AI is coming for a lot of those.
But what I was hoping that because and this is no knock to Bro Joe, I'm assuming he's a little bit younger. All right. I'm older. I'm not speaking for y'all. I'm an old man. All right. My body tells me it every single day. No one's mentioning the medical. No one's mentioning the 401k matches. No one's mentioning the fact that you can't really retire part-time. We retire at full-time places that are matching our 401ks, that are taking care of their employees, and that's not what you get with part-time work. No one's mentioning that. Yeah, we could make as much money. Money is good. But have you seen the medical costs? You know how much it costs for medical for my family? Over $1,000 a month for medical. I want someone to pay for that. Will you? We have a new business. Will you guys pay my medical for me? This is a new business, right? You will not do that? Well, that's messed up. But my point is like,
thoughts and prayers. I wish you luck. Thoughts and prayers, but no, I won't pay your medical. Sorry.
All right. Well, I got one more question, and then we'll go. We're running a little bit back on this one. This is actually very interesting. This is from Michael. This is what he's saying: population growth and economic expansion, I think is what he said, go hand in hand. You lose one, you lose the other too. What do y'all think about that?
Yeah, I mean, hey, GDP is your GDP per capita times your capita, right? And if your capita is dropping, unless your GDP per capita is going up, your GDP is going to fall. So absolutely, population decline is going to hurt GDP big time, especially in China.
All right, very good, very good. All right, you guys, let me get this off of here. We ran a little bit late, and y'all, thank you for watching this video. That is a wrap.